Good afternoon, folks. Taking a little bit of a break from my quilting project. I'm just down to quilting the border, and then I'll be doing the binding, so that's good. I had a bit of a hiccup the last couple days with a messed up little section, but I did some surgery and I got it all figured out. So for the recipient, I'm sure that they'll appreciate that handmade sometimes means imperfect, because we're all human and we're all trying to figure stuff out. So I'm here today to talk about essentially some gaslighting that's been going on around children's health defense. And I don't go looking for this. Honestly, someone brought this to my attention, and it seems like maybe I'm one of the not only, but there's not a lot of people who are interested in speaking publicly on these issues. So for better or for worse, I'm here to sort of lay the cards out on the table and ask us what we think about this stuff. So early last week, somebody brought to my attention an email that they had received, which is sort of a solicitation and an update from Children's Health Defense. And this was it. This is sort of just the heading. And, historic times are ahead. Please give us money to fight, government-sponsored censorship and that sort of thing. So this came out, it might have been actually the first week in April. So this may be a month old. I think it came out around the time of the announcement about Robert F. Kennedy going on. It had sort of give us some money, and then it was an update, a staff update. So it was talking about him filing with the Federal Election Commission on Wednesday, April 5th, to consider a run for president, and that he is now designated as chairman on leave. And the same, not the president part, but Mary Holland was also going to be working on the campaign, so her title was changed to president on leave and general counsel on leave. So this was sort of a status update on the two of them in light of the campaign that is going on. But underneath that section was a discussion of expanding leadership. And so they were talking about some new people that had joined their organization. And it had a line, and I'll just quote this from the email. It says, in February 2023, CHD, so Children's Health Defense, expanded its executive team by adding Chief Operating Officer Andrew Pek, who brings new executive management to CHD's infrastructure. Now, that's it. It doesn't say anything else about Andrew Pek, but he's bringing some new executive management to the infrastructure. And so there are people who are even more sort of tuned into things than I am. And they were like, well, let me look up and see who Andrew Pek is. So it's so convenient that we have LinkedIn and all of these things. So they went looking around, and it seemed like the most likely the first thing you might imagine is that you would go to Children's Health Defense website and put his name in the search bar to see what comes up. Like if he was hired in February, and they were making an announcement, he probably would be listed there somewhere. But funnily enough, he's not listed anywhere on the website. So I just now, about a half an hour ago, did a search in the search bar for Andrew Pek, A-N-D-R-E-W, and then Pek is P-E-K. There's no C, it's just P-E-K, it's Hungarian. And two articles came up, one from January of 2023 and one from June of 2022, but these were other Andrew Peks, or names that were similar. It wasn't the Andrew Pek, and both of these predated his hire. So neither of those articles, even though they came up in the search bar, were him. So he's not listed anywhere on the website in any articles, or and he's not on the team list. So this is again, I just pulled this today, the Children's Health Defense. This is their team page. And maybe it just hasn't been updated lately, but you would think if they would send out an email about the status of the changes for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Mary Holland, that would be updated on the website. But I don't see that has been updated. It doesn't say on leave on the website. So whoever's the webmaster over at Children's Health Defense, you might want to update that. It lists the acting president. It lists the financial manager and treasurer. It lists a senior attorney guy, and then it goes on to list a chapter director and a translations coordinator. So it kind of goes all the way down, and I would assume at least these last couple aren't the executive team per se. But yeah, the new addition as of February to the executive team is not yet added to the Children's Children's Health Defense website. So that's notable. So then I went looking on a LinkedIn, and this seemed like the most likely candidate, this Andrew Pek. Now, on LinkedIn, he has 6,200 followers and 500 plus connections. So I only have a fake LinkedIn account, so I don't like rate myself by the numbers. But that seems like a fair amount, of participation. He doesn't seem to post super regularly, but it doesn't say in anywhere. Well, I finally found, when I dug back through his activity, there was a mention of Children's Health Defense, but his title doesn't say that he's currently the Chief Operating Officer of Children's Health Defense. It literally says Andrew Pek, unlock human promise and safeguard informed consent. Talks about #design, consulting, innovation, leadership, and entrepreneurship. He's based in New York metropolitan area, and his listings are for Consulting Unplugged and Case Western Reserve University, which is where he got his master's degree. And then he has a number of featured links that go back to his podcast. And then he describes himself in the About section. It says that he is an internationally recognized expert on strategy, innovation, and leadership, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur and many other publications. And then it goes on to talk about organizations that he has helped. So he's an organizational management guy and literally a consultant for 17 years. And so he lists some of his clients, including BNP Paribas or Paribas, I don't know, it's French, and Citigroup. Which are two major financial investment firms that I have my eye on for Pay for Success Finance. And then it talks about he's involved in change management and design thinking. He's very into this idea of design thinking, and I'm sure he's very excited about this idea of working with sort of important executives and getting their creative juices flowing to like reimagine innovative business propositions. But some of his other clients as we go along will be a little bit more interesting. So he has this podcast called Consulting Unplugged, and it looks like he has his own like fee-for-service coursework where you can access his lectures and maybe other training materials so that you too can be a wonderful international consultant for Fortune 500 firms. And his specialties are innovation, strategy, design thinking, technology, and business. And so I want to point out the stuff. He's a consultant, and his focus is sort of organizational dynamics and also innovation, right? So innovation means seeing what's unfolding and then finding the opportunities in what's out there, right? And what's unfolding and what's out there right now has a lot to do with emergence and extended reality, right? And human plus situation. So then, I'm scrolling through and, looking at the listings on LinkedIn. Okay, here's his consulting gig, working with this Consulting Unplugged, his podcast. And then his consulting firm since 2005 was DxD. And then the X is like a person whose like arms are spread out, kind of, I guess, like a cartoon Michelangelo thing, but like not like very basic. And it's kind of an odd name, DxD or D cross D. Symbolically, it's interesting. I'll zoom in so you can see it a little bit closer. It's a person with their arms and legs spread out in an X in between these D's. So it's also like D&D. So that's kind of interesting. And so he works there with his wife, Janine, who I think is also active in the health freedom space. And he's coaching entrepreneurs and corporations to be more competitive. And again, the entrepreneurship stuff is really important because, again, that is part of this emergence and free market optimization in Web3. That's really focused on us as agents in the game. If we're agents in the game, we're entrepreneurs. Like that's another, you could just sort of swap out agents in game theory for entrepreneur. It's kind of pretty much the same thing as we move forward. He taught at IIT Institute of Design in Chicago. And then look, between 2002 and 2005, he was the global head of innovation and organizational effectiveness at Pfizer Consumer Healthcare. So, that's really interesting. And I'm, and later on, he ended up doing a lot of the consulting work, and I'll show this with his clients of DxD, were connected to global finance companies and global pharmaceutical companies, like the top ones, Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, Bayer, a few others that I'm less aware of, including like animal pharmaceuticals. So an interesting choice for someone that you're choosing to bring executive leadership into your organization as you're running a campaign to, I think, ostensibly question big pharma, right? Although maybe not so much, depending on this hire. And then before that, Mercer, Delta Consulting, and a little bit before that was Accenture, which is another global consultancy that's very deeply involved in this transition to extended reality, Web3, human capital finance. So it was a little bit surprising. So I initially saw this and I was like, oh, wow, okay. You can see this, this is his feature image, and it has this spiral stare. And if you were listening into the talk that Lynn Davenport and I did recently about Learn Capital and their new campus in Austin, they had a lot of spirally pictures too. So it feels sort of imprinted with the spirals. This spiral picture shows up in a lot of his images that he uses for promotional purposes. And so, but I still wasn't sure if this is the guy, because it seems odd, right? I was talking with someone today. They're like, I couldn't understand why Children's Health Defense would hire the former global, let me just get the title right, global head of innovation and organization effectiveness from Pfizer, right? That doesn't make a lot of sense. Someone who not only did that work, again, only till 2005, so that was a while ago, but literally ran a consulting firm right after that, doing work with Pfizer and these other big pharma companies, including Johnson & Johnson and Bayer. So I'm like, well, maybe it's not him, right? And so then I look at the Twitter and it's got the same picture, and there he is. He's got water. Again, we've got the water stuff going on, and mirrored sunglasses. He wears a lot of black. Mr. Pek. And again, he identifies himself as author, entrepreneur, and advisor in the field of creativity, innovation, and change management. So if anything, I guess we're in the time of change management, right? The people who are designing the change, and this guy, is one of the people who is in the room telling people who are doing the change management how to do it, optimize it all, right? But there's nothing in here about Children's Health Defense. I mean, if you notice on the LinkedIn, there was nothing about Children's Health Defense listed in the job listings or the experience or even the volunteering. But the Twitter feed, same guy, Consulting Unplugged, he was tweeting some Children's Health Defense stuff. So I'm like, okay, well, here's a tweet from retweeted from March 7th about Bell's palsy, and here's a RFK Jr. tweet again. This is from February 7th. So we know that the hire was in February, and earlier he retweeted. There's another February 7th, and a retweet from February 5th, and a retweet from February 6th. And then the latest, and that was like his own tweet, Andrew Pek. This was a promotion from LinkedIn. So we know that it was him. It's not just retweets. So his own tweet, it was February 6th of 2023. But prior to that, he hadn't actually tweeted anything since the fall of 2021. So for well over a year and a half, was not active on Twitter. So I thought that was interesting. And this is kind of a big deal to be talking about. So I wanted to make sure that I wasn't inaccurate, right? I can't find him on the web page, or I can't find him on Children's Health Defense website. He doesn't list anything on his LinkedIn. He doesn't mention it on Twitter, although there's some indications that this must be the guy. So I contacted Children's Health Defense, and I went to their contact page, and they said, here, fill out this email form, which I did, and then it says, or you can you can text us or call us. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll just text. And so I texted on midday Thursday, I think right around lunch on Thursday. And I was just like, hey, I got the email about the new staff. Can you confirm if this is the same guy? And I shared the LinkedIn. And so you can see. So this was on Thursday, April 27th at 12:15. It says, hi, I got your email about CHD staff updates. I wanted to confirm Andrew Pek, your new COO, was previously with DxD Partners. I didn't see him on your website. Thank you. And then I included the LinkedIn. And then a couple hours later, I get a response. Hi, I will confirm with Andrew and get back to you. Best, Cheryl, CHD. Okay, so I was like, great, right? It's really nice to get a response. so I didn't think about it till the next day, and like on Friday, I was like, oh, around 1:40, I said, hi, Cheryl, did you have a chance to confirm with Andrew? And then I didn't think about it again till after 5 o'clock on Friday, which no one's there. But I said, okay, is there an intention to get back to me on this? No response. And then on Monday, over the weekend, because I knew I wanted to do this presentation, and I'm trying to be, again, responsible and not make, inaccurate assumptions, right? And so I said on Monday evening, I said, well, unless I hear otherwise by noon tomorrow, Tuesday, I'll presume he came to CHD from DxD Partners. And then I shared the LinkedIn again. And then, so then today, someone forwarded me an interview that was done on CHD TV. Oh my gosh, I did not even know that there were all of these programs, that they have like their own, media empire over there, I guess. And it was with Michael Caine, and he was interviewing Andrew Pek as the introduction to the COO. And it's so funny because literally it was the day after I made this inquiry. So, I had asked on Thursday midday, and she got back to me. And then she must have maybe contacted them, and they're like, oh, okay, now somebody knows, right? So let's go out and do something, and then I'll play the clip. It's about a 10, 12-minute interview. I pulled about 3 minutes of it. You can listen to the whole thing if you want on Spotify. But essentially mentioning the Pfizer thing, although Andrew Pek never himself confirmed it. He just really talked all around it, and in very, very vague terms. So, after I saw that, I said, okay, Cheryl, I got the April 28th interview on CHD TV. What confirms it? So, essentially after that initial contact, it was just me talking to myself through the text, but at least that they knew that I knew. So this is the guy. And then it turns out today I went back through his LinkedIn a little bit more in more detail, and this is a post from 2 months ago. So it must have been his hire. And it just says, quote unquote, by night, I will continue to share my podcast, Consulting Unplugged, on all major channels such as YouTube, Apple, Spotify, etc. And by day, air quotes, I am thrilled to share that I am now serving as Chief Operating Officer at Children's Health Defense. So it was there. He did announce it, but it was just a post that got buried, and then his actual profile never got updated. So, when you listen to the interview, the clip that I pulled from the interview, you'll see, he's talking about being, stepping up onto the barricades and, fighting the good fight around, our rights and, informed consent and all those things. But if he was such a amazing warrior on this front, you would think that he would at least let people know publicly, if they were looking around, that who his current employer was. And as far as I can tell, Children's Health Defense doesn't seem to want people to know he's there, other than that initial vague email. And he's not particularly keen on having other people know that he's affiliated with Children's Health Defense. So it's sort of whatever, I guess, stealth change management. And it makes me wonder too, because realistically, his consulting firm, this DxD Partners, he was there for 17 years, and he had another firm before that called like iVibe, which there's some weird energy stuff going on with that. So iVibe and this DxD Partners. But he was a consultant. He wasn't a chief operating officer for anyone. He wasn't actually, he ran his own entrepreneurial company. It's hard to say. The iVibe seemed to have a handful of staff people. I don't know if DxD Partners was more than just he and his wife. But it wasn't like he was coming from an equivalent place with another firm. He didn't actually have experience as a COO. He had a whole lot of experience as a consultant. And I just think that's a really different skill set. So it makes me wonder, because I don't think I included this in the clip, but the lead in with Michael Caine of their brief interview from Friday morning implied that he had gotten to know Mary Holland, who's with the former, legal head of Children's Health Defense, because they, it sounds like maybe they live near each other. He was active in the Rockland, Bergen Children's Health Defense community, and he had a close contacts, collegial with Mary, and that's how they came to know one another. And so, I kind of wondered, did she just hand off the job to him because they knew each other, or was this an open call? You would imagine that if they actually did an open call for the job, that they could probably find somebody who wasn't a global innovation change maker for Pfizer and a consultant to global, big giant pharmaceutical firms. But who knows why? Nothing really came out in the interview as to why Children's Health Defense made that choice. And I will point out, since it was February, that was before Mary Holland and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. went on leave for this campaign. So they would have been in the loop, presumably, that you have a hire to your executive circle, right? And it didn't look like their team was really all that deep. So you would think that they would definitely, it wasn't like that would come as a shock to them that he was brought on board. So here, I'll play, okay, so the other interesting thing is, so on Spotify, I have a screenshot here. You can see the lists of the podcasts, and they're in chronological order. And there is one from April 27th, which is called UN Sex Abuse, Stop the Shots, Criminal Case and More. And then there's April 28th, which is Meet Children's Health Defense new COO, Andrew Pek. Now, I would say that if the guy's been on the job for 2 months, it's kind of new, not brand new. And then April 29th is Adults with Autism with Sheila Lewis-Ely. So you've got 27th, 28th, and 29th on Spotify. But then if you go to the Children's Health Defense channel itself, you can see the 29th, same thing, Adults with Autism. You can see the 27th, UN Sex Abuse, Stop the Shots. But there is no 28th. The interview with the COO isn't on the Chibi channel either. So again, Mr. Pek continues to be the disappearing man when it comes to when it comes to Children's Health Defense websites. All right, had a little bit of issue with the map there. So again, here is the image. Meet CHD's new COO, Andrew Pek. There's a little video that goes with it if you are able to access it on Spotify, but you can't screen record that. So I just have the audio here. So I'm going to go ahead and play the audio for you. This is about 2.5 minutes.
Your background does come from a corporate background, and coming to CHD now as the chief operating officer, you're bringing a lot of those expertise and,
Now, I will point out on this that Michael Kane, who is the interviewer here, I briefly came to know Michael a little bit during the early phases of the lockdown. And prior to joining Children's Health Defense, he was a teacher in special education in the New York City public school system. And as people who follow me know, my work primarily was in the education space, and particularly Pay for Success Finance was targeting special education, kids with special education. So we found common cause, and I collaborated and I shared some stuff with him. And I hadn't realized that he had joined the staff, but in December of 2021, I kind of had this run-in with Mary Holland over the information about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. having been, we don't know the end date of, with Vantage Point Capital Partners, which was investing in emerging technology and alternative energy and clean tech and health tech and different things. So Michael got brought into this email thread, and at one point I was saying, hey, Michael, you should look at the Natural Resources Defense Council grants. And that's where Robert F. Kennedy Jr. had been, the lead attorney for 20 years, because I said, if you look at the grants of who's funding NRDC, you'll realize it's all the same people who are funding the privatization of education and the ed tech, including MacArthur and Rockefeller and Hewlett-Packard. That many of the same players, there was this overlap, and that I was sort of appealing to his humanity, and I know that he cares about kids, or he wouldn't have done that work, because being a teacher, especially in the New York City schools, is very challenging. And I said, it is what it is, right? And at the time, he sort of shot back that, well, didn't my underwriter work at Penn? And I said, you mean my husband? Because I'm always very open about that. My husband has sort of a mid-level administrative job at the University of Pennsylvania, which is, the largest private employer in the city. I mean, the city is the largest employer, and then Penn is the next largest employer. And, I'm always open about that, and I don't pull punches when it comes to what's going on over at Penn. I feel a responsibility to explain to people what's over there. But I thought that was a really crass remark to frame the work that I do independently. And I will point out that sort of my frustration with a lot of this is there's a lot of money flowing through this organization, whether it's through Children's Health Defense directly or through the publishing juggernaut that has come through. There are billionaires attached to this. There are many, many people in the resistance who are on some part of the gravy train here, right? Whether that means getting money directly, getting sponsorship for their organizations, getting political backing, getting sort of social credit, backhandedness and whatever. There's a lot of people who are now beholden to this organization, but not me. And I think that makes them mad. So I just want to point this out because I'm still, the one thing I appreciate about Michael Caine is that he introduced me early on to that book, This Perfect Day, which turns out by Ira Levin about, the guy living in the world run by Unicomp, and everyone's getting monthly chemotherapeutic treatments to keep them in line and to keep them as, ants in the ant computer. And so that's the one thing I appreciate about Michael, but that comment and that exchange both with Mary Holland and him, if I had any sort of respect for the organization, it kind of flew out the window at that point, because if you can't navigate respectful, accurate criticisms of conflicts of interest with the person who's at the center of your organization and now this candidacy, what are we doing, right? If you don't stand on your own integrity and you can't make solid counter proposals other than like calling names and trying to shame me because my husband works at a university, that's not the same as being the senior lead attorney for 20 years, someone who's checking the books and knows that one of your largest major ongoing donors is the Rockefeller Foundation, and then turning around and pretending like the Rockefeller Foundation is the huge problem, even though it's like paid your salary for years and years. And you could do that, but he's never actually acknowledged the money that went into NRDC and its connection to the overall climate narrative. So anyway, Michael Caine, the one who said, oh, is your underwriter a professor at Penn? And he's not a professor. I'm like, yes, Michael, my husband actually does work at Penn, and I'm very open about that. So anyway, back to Michael Caine and checking in with Andrew about his corporate business expertise.
Helping to fine tune our machine that we have over here. But
it's a machine, right? He's fine tuning the machine. I betcha it's quite the machine.
Your background goes to the big corporations like BP and even Pfizer. Talk to us about your corporate background and where you stand now.
Okay, so BP and Pfizer, and that's Michael Caine saying that in this podcast about Meet CHD's new COO, Andrew Pek.
Yeah, well, thank you for asking that. I mean, I get that question asked a lot. I mean,
It got asked on Thursday afternoon, and then they couldn't seem to answer it.
I had a really distinguished career, as I mentioned earlier, in working with many different corporations from all over the world, with the emphasis on helping organizations with their business strategy, how they develop their organization, how do they develop leaders, how do they affect change in their respective marketplace.
Now, I would just point out that probably many of the leaders of these global corporations are involved at high levels in the transitions that are underway. And, some people, like to call it the Great Reset. I don't find that term's particularly helpful at this point. But these are the major multinational global corporations that are pushing us into extended reality and Web3 and impact finance. These are those firms that he's working for. And he's there not to question them or redirect them into some more humane framework, but actually to help them make more profit and achieve their goals. And they're I think a lot of these we should question what the goals are.
And I ended up working with some of these big corporations and helping them in their specific endeavors. But what I quickly learned, it's almost like that, I can't even remember now, the Bruce Willis movie, where, you know, you see this movie and at the end of the story, you realize that he was actually not alive, he was dead. And
now I would say this is a strange story to bring into, like, tell me about your business interest. Like, let me tell you about a movie where somebody was dead at the end and they didn't know it, which is The Sixth Sense. And that was M. Night Shyamalan. It was actually filmed in Philadelphia. So I don't know. Maybe Andrew was giving me a little hat tip there with M. Night Shyamalan and The Sixth Sense. But yeah, it's a strange thing to go to a movie, like to bring in a movie and that kind of movie that you were dead and you didn't know it, but there were some clues. So he's going to talk about that there were some crumbs that he noticed that maybe things weren't so great. But I would say if you look at Andrew Pek's, how he presents himself online, which is, again, someone who is selling himself as a consultant to entrepreneurs, and that type of person needs to be very charismatic, right? Because if you're going to convince someone that you can give them services that they want to make them better in their business, that you have to have a lot of self-confidence. So there's no hesitancy about any of these business operations in any of his online presence. This is only coming out in the interview, sort of this idea of like, maybe there were some crumbs that all was not okay along the way.
And you miss the clues along the way. And, you know, because of the experiences that I've had in the last 5-6 years, all of a sudden you saw the clues along the way, the breadcrumbs, that there is this very sort of insidious, sort of corrupt ecosystem that puts profits over people, right?
Now, his whole business model is about profit. I guess he might say, I'm here to make people their most creative, innovative selves, and that's not exactly about profit, although, you know, I get paid. I'm here to be a people optimizer, right? Unlocking human potential. But most of these companies, they're there to make money. They're not there to lose money.
Right? You know, whether you're talking about the private sector, whether you're talking about the public sector, they're all working, colluding together to really promote their brand or their product.
That's his business. His business is to help them promote their brands and products. Exactly. That's exactly what he's done for decades. And when he left the consultancy, it was in February of 2023. So it's not like he said, what I've seen over the past 5 years, he didn't have a gap in his LinkedIn. And I can show you that. His connections to DxD Partners, which is his own firm, so it's hard to say if he really shut that down totally or not, went up until February of 2023. So it's not like he had a awakening and stepped back and decided to take a hiatus and, you know, go do permaculture for 3 years or something like that. No, at least that's not how he represents himself online.
Without regard or consideration for the potential harmful effects that it has on individuals, children, and society at large. I'm fond of this quote by Ambrose Bierce, who wrote The Devil's Dictionary, that, you know, corporations are an ingenious device to put individual profit over individual responsibility.
So it's another interesting reference to the devil there. Again, I don't see that someone who has a master's degree in organizational development and has built his career on advising corporations is just now realizing that there might be a problem with that business model. It's a little disingenuous, honestly.
And it's so true that, you know, we have to really reform these industries to hold them more accountable, because
So I think that's important to understand the reform structure, because I think in light of RFK Jr.'s campaign, you know, there are a lot of questions. He said that he's not anti-V, right? He is for safe things, right? He wants safe, maybe personalized things, maybe, things that involve precision medicine, right? And so the reform, I think, is really central to this idea of reforming and safety, that how much accountability is in that reform? Because again, his client base were the same people that were largely rolling out what's happened over the last 3 years. So again, I think it's important, the word choice there, and he's talking about reforming it.
They are responsible for inflicting harms. Because of my professional experiences, I really understand how these systems work.
Yeah, because he was part of it for over 20 years. I mean, and again, I think that's something that the resistance movement sort of fell into early on, was this idea that the insiders who have had an awakening are some tremendous asset to the system. And while I would say I'm not saying that those people are unredeemable, I don't think that those are the people that you put at the front of your movement. Me personally, my own personal experiences is that the conversion stories, the people who've had the awakenings, they often don't hold over time. They often don't turn out well. So again, I'm not saying that his choices are unforgivable, but I would say for the most part, to me, for them to have hired, a head of global innovation for Pfizer for the COO position, that would kind of be like back in the day when Robert F. Kennedy hired a convicted, someone who did prison time for bird smuggling, animal smuggling, to work at the river keepers to oversee polluters. And at that point, his mentor and 7 other board members walked off because they said, this compromises us. Like, we can't hold people accountable if our internal hires that you've chosen, Robert, are compromised. Not just that you're compromised in terms of having some criminal record, but literally an environmental criminal record. Like, we're an environmental organization. You're hiring a convicted bird smuggler. That is inconsistent. And yet, here we do. This seems like a take two. Okay, so Children's Health Defense is now hiring this global head of innovation for Pfizer as their chief operating officer. It's a very similar thing. And, my frustration is I've talked, to a few people, and I think so much money and influence and connections were flowing through this organization that people are loath to ask for some accountability. Like, I think anyone who has given money to Children's Health Defense at some point should contact them and say, what is up with this? I don't understand the rationale that you would have your executive team expanded in this time of transition with this campaign to be bringing in someone with this background. It doesn't seem like you can be a good advocate for that. Like, I'm sure there are many, many people in the metropolitan New York area who would make an amazing COO. But I think putting Andrew Pek, someone who is a consultant to global financial and pharmaceutical firms, in that position, especially when I find that there are a lot of questions that I have around these repurposed drugs and what's coming next with Pay for Success Finance, having someone who's still connected to pharmaceutical firms raises a lot of concerns.
And how they must be fixed in order for us to, hold them responsible and avoid these harms that they are inflicting on it recklessly.
So that's not a very smooth answer. I mean, honestly, if this is a guy who's like a global consultant, you would think he would have a better answer than this, like prepared. This idea that, oh, we have to reform the system so that we can stop the harms that are being waged. It doesn't feel authentic to me. This is a link from his website that talks about the Pfizer connection. It's a link to an article from Business Times in May of 2021. So again, we were in the middle of the lockdowns, and it talks about how the health crisis has pushed companies to enhance their organizational performance. So in some ways, this is like a boon to hit, the lockdowns were a boon for his, disruptive transition, innovation, design thinking, to get their companies like on the track for the new normal. And this is further down in the article. It says, be the change you want to see. It says, Andrew shared a success story of one of their clients. His team helped Pfizer Consumer Healthcare improve and diversify the pipeline of new products. Let me just say that again. His team helped Pfizer Consumer Healthcare improve and diversify the pipeline of new products. Okay, so we know what that means. Through aggressive growth strategies and innovation. Now ask yourself, if you're a supporter of Children's Health Defense, you should be asking about this hire. Aggressive growth strategies and innovation for Pfizer Consumer Health. What did Andrew's team do? They developed and implemented a comprehensive global strategy and an innovation platform that extended beyond products and focused on new business models, service, delivery, and customer experience. And then as a result, the client becomes the leading pharmaceutical and consumer healthcare company globally with double-digit growth, and successfully established a comprehensive and integrated network of champions committed to making innovation a habit. This isn't a guy who just had some small position at Pfizer. I mean, if you're going to take him at his word, this was the person who helped put Pfizer where it is now. All right, so that was the interview. Again, it's not on. It's on Spotify, but it's not on the Children's Health Defense page. I've gone through. I've gone through the Twitter and the LinkedIn and the situation with Children's Health Defense. I do want to mention. Okay, so I talked a little bit about him being a consultant, not just. He wasn't a COO somewhere else or an executive. He was a consultant. So this is from his website. And, it says that he has traveled 2 million miles coaching, nudging, and I put a little arrow by the nudging because, again, these organizational behavioral psychologists are the people who are going to get us nudged around, teaching, influencing, laughing, and learning from these top executives and companies. So he really enjoyed himself doing this work. Like, it sounded like this was something that he felt he was really good at and maybe only in retrospect has concerns about. But I'm not so sure how this authentic his concerns are. It says his clients are leaders of every stripe, smart, confident, committed, and endlessly fascinating. So he wasn't really, like when he was talking about seeing cookie crumbs and maybe there was a problem or, the devil's bargain with corporations doing profit over people. This was his bag. Like this was his happy place. And it says his design thinking is his stock in trade. And after 30 plus years of corporate consulting, they call him the consultant's consultant. So, for what it's worth, I worked at a nonprofit and we would have these organizational consultants come in sometimes, and usually most of us we just grin and bared it. It wasn't something we were super excited about, but that was his livelihood and that was what he was about. And so, and then he wrote his book Stimulated, and again, think about all the energy, the consulting unplugged with his energy, the I vibe is energy, and then the Stimulated, also energy with his wife, Janine McGlade. Okay, so let's take a second to look at his clients. Okay, so this is from his consulting gig. So his firm was founded in 2005. So up to that point, the 3 years up to that, he was working for Pfizer Consumer Health. And they were building the skills of the next generation of entrepreneurs and change agents. So I think if we imagine who are the people, again, I don't really go with the Davos thing, but if you wanted just to go with the trope of like who's at Davos, it would be the change agents and the entrepreneurs and the people doing provocative, innovative thinking, right? That's the kind of people that he works with and that he's connected to. So this is also part of that. It says that recently he helped a group of biomedical executives secure a $172 million special purpose vehicle acquisition company, a SPAC, for a new life sciences investment firm dedicated to helping launch new products for treating chronic disease such as asthma, diabetes, and heart disease. Now, I would say that these are all things, chronic illness are setups for impact finance, social impact bonds, and wellness, specifically diabetes and heart disease and asthma. These are all setups for social impact bonds. And so I would like to be interested in like what the name of that SPAC is and how recently that happened. Prior to DxD Partners, which he started in 2005, he was the head of global innovation effectiveness for Pfizer Consumer Health. And he was a partner for Accenture. Accenture is a big consulting firm that's part of all of this transition stuff. Accenture Consulting, working on global change management, right? So essentially, Mr. Pek has been right in the middle of all of the stuff that's happening. Now, before I move on, I want to just touch on this SPAC stuff, and that's something somebody brought to my attention, another friend, and they also mentioned that, that in his announcement speech, RFK Jr. made sort of a promise to address chronic illness in children. Okay, and that if he didn't improve sort of chronic illness in children, that people should not elect him for a second term. So I'm gonna go ahead and play this clip.
And all these autoimmune diseases started. If you're my age, you never saw anybody with rheumatoid arthritis or juvenile diabetes when you were younger. The allergic diseases, food allergies, peanut allergies, and eczema, anaphylaxis, which now are ubiquitous, are at 27% of our school budgets are now going to special education. This is crippling to the middle class.
Special education is the cost offset for impact finance
in this country, and we need to figure out what it is. And I can tell you this. When I am the President of the United States, I am going to end the chronic disease epidemic in this country.
Chronic disease epidemic. Okay, so that's wellness. That's pay for success finance in wellness. And I've been saying this for a long time, that the trigger element was the global lockdowns around this one thing, right? But the marathon is wellness, is managed wellness in the outside in robot. That's what's coming, and that's going to link pay for success finance and Internet of Everything and smart buildings and socio-technical cyber-physical systems. And it's going to link it to money. It's going to link it possibly to free markets, because remember, he was Mr. We want free markets in energy, and we don't want crony capitalism. We want the other kind of capitalism, you know, free market capitalism, which is the exchanges, the tokenized exchanges in the game.
If I have not significantly dropped the level of chronic disease in our children by the end of my first term, I do not want you to reelect me.
So, you know, even if he doesn't get elected, he's introduced this idea into the atmosphere. And again, I'm not pro chronic disease, but a lot of these chronic illnesses are also related to things outside of individual human behaviors or around environmental toxicity, which may be part of this. But, you know, I was talking to Jason about it, and he's like, well, it's so hard to explain to people why this would be a problem. And I said, well, the problem, as I keep saying with pay for success finance, is that if you create a profit center from managing chronic illness in children, the logic of the market will dictate that you will have more children with chronic illness better managed, right? And so I've had a lot of questions about what happened with the Flint water situation, with the lead in the water, because lead remediation is one of the things. Usually it's about homes, but they're looking at the blood levels of lead in children. And if you can link a pay for success deal, because there are pay for success deals in lead tied to housing, but imagine if the twisted logic of ruining the water system in Flint and poisoning all of the people, including the children, so that you could make them sick, so that you could impose a solution that would improve their circumstances, that would make you money on your impact bond, right? Essentially, these systems are not built on resolving the problem, but of growing the problem and managing with data, right? And so these systems of pay for success finance, which is linked to Accenture, which Mr. Pek, you know, has you know, it's been a while, but he came out of Accenture and he talks about that being formative for him. These big finance companies like BNP Paribas, working in pay for success finance, Capital One, ties to George Overholzer, who created all of this stuff in this space. It creates a situation where it causes harm in order to create the profit for the impact deals. It's what do you call it? Munchausen syndrome. It's and that was also in The Sixth Sense, Mr. Pek. This Munchausen syndrome, where the girl was harmed by her mother, who made her sick to make herself feel like the caretaker. That's what pay for success finance is in this chronic illness, and it's going to throw the children into the outside-in robot in the name of giving them wellness. And I can't get people to understand that. It's really hard to get people to understand that. So I'm very concerned about the SPAC that we're talking about. I'm concerned about what is being said about here again, the SPAC is referenced in another setting here, this $172 million special purpose vehicle acquisition company with life sciences for helping launch new products for chronic diseases, diabetes and heart disease. That is going to be pay for success finance. And I found this as well. Someone passed this along to me, Population Health Partners. I think it might be based in the UK, but it has a listing of partners, some in London, some in Brooklyn, some in New York. There's Andrew Pek appears to have a connection to this Population Health Partner program. And they've got an effort called Validate Health to deliver evidence connected to stock investments in wellness. And this Population Health Partners also, there was a press release from last November, with a company called Invivyid, INVIVYD. It's a strategic partnership between Population Health Partners and this firm doing future engineered antibodies for COVID and beyond. And that this Population Health Partners has done work with the medicines company and Pfizer. They're an investment firm that deploys strategic assets to solve health and economic challenges, which sounds a lot like pay for success finance, to address prevalent and costly diseases. And so it makes me wonder if the SPAC might possibly involve this organization. But these chronic costly diseases are connected to this innovative finance system. And then it just goes on to say a few things that this is from Population Health Partners. Again, their investment, they're helping companies strategize around health outcomes. We know that prevalent diseases are an untapped store of value. And with the right strategic and operational approach, they offer a massive market opportunity for biotechnology investors. And yeah, so are those the crumbs, Mr. Pek, right? Like maybe that's a bit of a clue there. Here's something else from Population Health Partners. They work on generating evidence for biopharmaceutical R&D productivity. They reduce the cost of evidence generation. Now, I don't know if these are in pharmaceutical trials, but a lot of the stuff when we talk about evidence-based healthcare treatments and wellness treatments, all the pay for success finance is linked to evidence. Again, they're about in finding value for investors in life sciences. It's about money. We believe that we can unlock as much value in prevalent disease in the next 20 years as we have seen industry unlock in oncology and rare diseases in the past 20. So again, chronic illness is a revenue stream that is coming. And I think it's very concerning, again, that RFK Jr. did this hat tip to that in the speech, got a big ovation there. And this is a website that talks about it, the Institute for Child Success, Pay for Success as a tool to improve social determinants of health. And specifically underneath, they talk about chronic health conditions as being one of the things that they're focused on in conjunction with the World Health Organization. So population health and social determinants of health, and wellness, that is the marathon, right? The lockdowns, injections were the short term, and the wellness is the marathon. So I just want to. So this is his firm, DxD Partners. Okay, founded in 2005. We've done that. Here is the strange logo again. It says disrupt times design, disrupt by design. The X is a human, but it doesn't have a face. It looks like the head is actually a teardrop shape, and it has hands, the fingers, hands out and fingers spread and feet out and spread. So it's quite an unusual logo there. And then these are the clients, right? And so if you weren't sure, like, oh wow, he only worked at Pfizer, that was 15 years ago, we shouldn't count that, no, he's been working with them, but just in a consulting capacity. So for the people who are maybe just listening, I'll read out the clients of DxD Partners. Total, I'm not sure what Total is, Steelcase, Barclays, BNP Paribas, Ferring Pharmaceuticals, Mall Group, Alpharma, I think that's animal, veterinary pharmaceuticals, Bayer, Ericsson, Kraft, Estee Lauder, Watson, Hershey, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, and HSBC, and Capital One. I'm not sure if I said Capital One. So we've got the big pharma in there with Alpha Pharma, Ferring, Johnson & Johnson, and Pfizer. We've got banking with Barclays, BNP Paribas, Capital One, and HBSC, and Citi. And also Bayer is pharma. And then we've got Ericsson. So Ericsson is the Internet of Things. And moving forward into extended reality and Web3. So I'm just going to hit on a couple of these images. Again, we've got the CDC listing for the Johnson & Johnson product. We have the U.S. Food and Drug Administration screenshot there of the Pfizer product. We've got HSBC Bank that's working on impact bonds, including a Skill India impact bond. And if you were listening to the work that Jason was doing the other night about ASU, GSV, and AI in education, this is about reskilling workers for AI. I was looking for Barclays. I didn't find a lot. There's a lot about green bonds in Barclays, but it's important to know that Barclays and HSBC, which are both clients of his, were connected to Big Society Capital, which is what Ronald Cohen used to set up the first money behind the social impact bonds, social finance in Great Britain. That started back in, I don't know. It's a bit ago. Here's the history of all of it. The Social Investment Task Force, launched in April of 2000 by Gordon Brown. And then it was headed up by Ronald Cohen, and they started putting money together, and they created this Big Society Capital. But it was done in partnership with Barclays and HSBC also, which are clients of his, of Pek's, and then also Lloyd's Banking and the Royal Bank of Scotland. So they were all involved in getting social impact finance set up. I included just the Ericsson, just as a reminder that this is about all of the Wi-Fi, the World Wide Web, the Web3, the Internet of Everything is Ericsson. Johnson & Johnson, I also included Robert Woods Johnson Foundation because they're involved in a lot of pay for success finance and wellness and education. And they were a funder of MyPass, the Austin blockchain digital identity for health records. And they gave a bunch of money to KnowledgeWorks. So they're both in education impact finance and health impact finance. They've given $1 million to Brookings Institution. George Overholtzer was one of the founding partners at Capital One, which is a client of Pek's, and he was the pioneer in the pay for success space. He helped found the nonprofit finance fund, and then later Third Sector Capital Partners, that was essentially packaging up a lot of the early pay for success finance deals in Santa Clara County, California. Someone pointed out to me that Ferring Pharmaceuticals, it's very much focused on IVF and maternity care and reproductive health. So again, a lot of the impact finance is around women and children and babies and prenatal care. And this overlaps especially in the IVF space with some of the eugenics programs of screening the embryos. So that is Ferris. And then this person also pointed out that one of the products, it's called budesonide, budesonide. It's like, unless it's budesonide, which they had packaged as something called Cortiment, Ferring Pharmaceuticals Cortiment, for ulcerative colitis, was also examined in the context of COVID as a treatment. And so you can kind of see some overlap there where it might be going into the space with the repurposed drugs. And that's, again, what Steve Kirsch is connected to, the repurposed drugs. So that's again the client, some of the client list there. Just wanting to hit on Accenture. I've talked about Accenture in the past, but it's this consultancy firm, I think actually now based out of Ireland. And, they're connected. They were working in Pay for Success Finance. Here's a screenshot for January of 2015. So that's pretty early on, looking at social impact bonds to connect philanthropic and private money for positive social outcomes. So Accenture is in the Pay for Success Finance space, also in digital identity space, also in blockchain space, frictionless solutions, also in interesting smart cards. And this is a map that I made early on in June of 2020 around this inclusive banking during the pandemic, and this idea of linking payment systems due to the lockdown to smart card systems and digital identity. Accenture was a partner with the Digital Dollar Foundation. And from that, I have in this map a connection to Louise James, who was presenting on responsible digital transformation for social impact. And that was, I think, at Davos back in 2019. Their theme in 2019 was Globalization 4.0. So Accenture had people there focused on digital transformation for impact. And then there's this gentleman, Gary Glickman, who had been in the Pay for Success Finance unit of Accenture, and he had been working on smart cards and social impact bonds. So again, that's going to be the programmable money. So it's not just a central bank digital currency. It can be any kind of programmable money. And then Accenture was also connected to development impact bonds. There was another paper they were connected to, the convergence continuum towards a fourth sector in global development. So a lot of the humanitarian aid. But Gary Glickman, I remember, was an important guy because of his connection to programmable money and impact finance. And okay, so that's Accenture. And then he was also, his first job, I think, let me just revisit. Yeah. Oh, no, the first job was Accenture. The second job after Accenture was with this organization called Mercer, which I hadn't heard of before, but evidently it's a very large consulting firm that goes back to 1945, involved in human resources and financial services. And so then I'm assuming maybe he was involved in the human resources side of things, but it says that it is the world's largest investment advisory with over $300 billion outsourced assets under management and $15 trillion under advisement in total. So I can imagine that probably Mercer is involved. Definitely I saw some things about ESG investing. So this is about sustainability investing with Mercer. And if it's sustainability, eventually it's also going to be social impact finance as well. Right, so we've got all of that. Oh, and then this is the iVibe. So I'm not sure how iVibe overlaps with DxD Partners, if he just has some different names for them. But this website is no longer active, but there's a few pages on the Wayback Machine, and it seems like it was connected to his book Stimulated. And again, it looks like energy. It's got a brain, a part black and white, part color, with these different words shooting out of it. And it was a consultancy with a number of different staff members. I think there were maybe 10 people on staff. So I'm not sure if it preceded or they ran concurrently. But this is the listing described as, consulting services. The address is in Palisades, New York, and it doesn't have a year started, and that's sort of gone defunct. But iVibe, I think, is useful to understand just the energetics that are represented. And his background, he got a master's in organizational behavior at Case Western. He grew up in Cleveland. And it says that he's also a lecturer at Wharton occasionally. And his family background is Hungarian. Evidently, there was a large Hungarian community in Cleveland where he grew up. And of course, Cleveland is the home of Standard Oil and the Rockefeller stomping ground. So there's a lot of interesting stuff in Cleveland. And again, his family being Hungarian, there's a lot of people who end up in my map from of Hungarian descent, like Ervin Laszlo and systems thinkers. So, and then a lot of the physicists, of course, the Hungarian Martians. And the thing about Case Western, I was trying to find it today and I couldn't, but I'm pretty sure that Julius Stolman's World Institute had a connection to Case Western back in the day. But it was one of the early biophysics programs and early computing programs. It was, I think in the 70s, it had one of the first computing degrees. And then it's early, it was very active in, I guess not surprisingly, with the Rockefellers in town, that it was, it says in 1888, it offered the first required laboratory course in physiology in the US. So it was a leader in biophysics and computing. Okay, so that's that. And then, so I'll run a little bit. This is a little bit of a clip of his background.
I'm Eastern European. My family's from Hungary. They're immigrants. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, very industrial. Like there was, I think at one point, more Hungarians in Cleveland, Ohio than any other city than Budapest. So it was like a little, as they say, Magyar, a Hungarian nation. Mm-hmm. And so, I had that always sense of striving and achievement. So I started really early on working. Like when I was 13 years old, my mom said, summer job, you got to get a job. You got to learn how to work, which now sounds a little like indentured servitude. Kids today, I don't know if is always as ambitious or pushed that way by their parents, but my parents believed in a strong work ethic. So I early on started to work. I was a caddy at a golf course, so there was work. I was earning money, which was superb. But what I learned early on, it wasn't just the business currency, the knowledge of the job that I mastered, but it was the relationships. And even learning how to play golf, for example.
So he was connected to, I guess, some pretty high flyers in Cleveland.
And working and interacting with people who were way above my pay grade in education and status in life at the time. My parents, we began from humble beginnings. Mm-hmm. And so that really taught me early on the value of connecting with people early on. And I've applied that sort of ethos ever since. So when I graduated from college, I went working for a large oil company.
A large oil company. So maybe that's BP, because that's what Michael Caine said.
Friends thought
and that's not on the LinkedIn, of course.
Sold out to a big oil company. Worked in marketing, worked in human resources, had a nice set of experiences. And I thought, all right, this is pretty good. I'm making good money. I had a really nice car, all those things that you would expect with that achievement. But I wasn't satisfied. I felt like, all right, having a good job is nice. Thinking about, getting married someday and having a family, all of which was sort of, again, maybe my conditioned response on how you live your life. But I felt this burning desire to do more. And so even during the time when I was working full time early on, I had side entrepreneurial things going on, businesses, and I was starting to do some already freelance kind of consulting. So I ended up in professional services, worked with a large firm called Accenture. That's on my resume.
And again, Accenture is a really important player in everything that's unfolding.
Mm-hmm. And wow, did my world explode, because not only was I doing work, I was traveling all over the world, working with some of the most senior companies and leaders. It was really heady stuff. It was just amazing. Sometimes those pinch me moments, right?
Right.
So he was operating in some really high level circles. And again, I'm sure that the story that will be told is like, oh, well, he's an insider. And so he's going to bring up all of these inside information to us. But I would say, it seems like everyone is obscuring his involvement with the organization. He's not really upfront about it. Children's Health Defense isn't really upfront about it. So if all of this stuff is happening covertly behind the scenes, like what does that mean for people who are, members of Children's Health Defense, donors to Children's Health Defense, people who maybe don't give them money but are following the work and believe in the work? What does it mean that there are these sort of things going on behind the scenes that seem somewhat questionable. And then when we find out about them, what do we do? Because, my frustration is, I've had some conversations and there are people who are like, well, I can't say anything because, I have these connections. And I think throughout the last 3 years, there was a consolidation of the resistance under this umbrella such that people would be put in a position of not being able to ask these questions. Like, what is the motivation beyond simply like, oh, an insider is going to somehow benefit us? But then where are our principles on this? Is that the right choice? Is that the best candidate to represent our interest as someone who is the global innovation person for Pfizer, Consumer Healthcare, that helped grow their brand with disruptive, innovative technology? That then what? Like, we know what that is. And again, I can set aside him as an individual human being, and I'm not saying that he should forever pay penance, on whatever that was that his past does, and who knows if it's continuing now. But you shouldn't be the figurehead of an organization that is doing something entirely different or in the face of that machine. Like, it is inconsistent. And I feel like people if there are people out there who are still believing in this as an organization, you have a responsibility to the other people who may not know this, if you're hearing this, to ask the question, what is up with this hire? What is this motivation? What is this idea of the cost-benefit analysis of the baggage that comes with this hire? I think that's a really important thing to ask, that we should be asking. Because he clearly enjoyed his time in the spotlight with the people who would be the people, in the meetings who are planning everything that's happening.
And that just gave me the foundation, and my world went from, my parents were educated and hardworking, but I think when I grew up out of my system in Cleveland, Ohio, which is a great place to grow up, I started to see the world in different ways when I started to travel, which was totally amazing and enriched my life, and then gave me the sort of confidence to want to do more, to help people be more innovative, creative, and so forth and so on.
Yeah. So his world got very big after he was at Accenture. Here's his podcast, Consulting Unplugged. I kind of zoomed in on that. I think my friends who are more in line with the esoteric symbolism, I think you could make something out of that. There's a circle, and then there's a swooshy thing with a plug. That, I guess, that is the unplugged, but to me it looks quite Saturny, if you ask me. And again, we have the electrical symbolism, and then this is the imagery from his Twitter. It's a framed print, I guess, in his office that is a spiral staircase that definitely has sort of a spiral vortex energy feel to it. And, he just has all of the, his clients. I'm assuming their client list. He's talking about, like, you could pay for his course and to get access to his materials to learn how to be a consultant's consultant, I guess. And most of these, the clients that are listed are clients that were already on the DxD website. But there's a few extras. Salesforce is on this, so I'm assuming there must be a relationship there if he's promoting that. Ford, and of course, Salesforce is behind the social impact dashboards. These are mostly ones that were already on the list. Hershey was on the list. Cornell, he has, I think, an adjunct connection to Cornell as a lecturer. Korn Ferry, Deloitte. Deloitte is right up there with Accenture in terms of rolling all of this stuff out with digital identity. Kraft and Hershey's. And then this is an interview that he did, I think, last year, January of 2022, so a little over a year ago, with Joel Shapiro at the Kellogg Business School, and it's all about data analytics. And so, that would be in line with the Salesforce clientele, and the data analytics are us living in a predictive modeling zone. And let's see. So I'm just going to hit on a few things, and again, this is from the LinkedIn, 2002 to 2005. And then I think then it continued probably through his firm. And I did locate a slide share from, I think, the iVibe. This is one of his colleagues at iVibe, David Lipsky. And it's the case story with Pfizer, building a culture of innovation. Innovation champions, special rewards and recognition. The challenge was a lack of innovation, focus, and alignment, lack of participation and engagement, ineffective new product development process, right? Okay. Lack of innovation, leadership, and governance. Our solution, they came up with a solution, designed and developed a Pfizer-specific innovation process, redesigned global and regional innovation metrics. Sounds like something for Faith for Success. Designed a team and individual-based rewards. That's what the organizational people do. They figure out how to nudge you to highlight success and reinforce innovative behavior. So this is behaviorism, right? This is corporate behaviorism. And as a result, a robust, aligned, motivated network of 100 plus innovation champions who drove 1.5 billion in incremental revenue in 3 years. Revolutionary new category growth and product innovations such as Listerine pocket packs, and Rolaids soft chews, right? We all need a little bit more antacid and fresh breath. Tripled the value of the company in 3 years. Okay, so yeah, all they needed were the right reward systems, right? The right innovation and the right reward systems. And, it's interesting because in the interview on Spotify with Michael Caine and Andrew Pek, he talks about meeting up with Mary Holland, and they met at the Bergen, Rockland County meetups that they had, in their yard, and, they were working on their various advocacy projects. And so I'm assuming, one of his firms is in Palisades, New York. He must live sort of in the border of, northern New Jersey, borderline of New York State. And, coincidentally, Pearl River, which is it's a 300, I guess Pfizer owns 330 acres. They've developed 22 of them with 5 buildings. It's one of their 9 major research and development sites, is also in Rockland County. You can see there. So, because I noticed that northern New Jersey, when I was doing my research on Bell Labs, it's lousy with pharmaceuticals. So we've got the Pfizer stuff, and BNP Paribas was one of the other clients. Now, I did a whole write-up here about BNP Paribas's investments in a pay-for-success finance deal in Connecticut with low-income mothers who had addiction issues, and their children were being threatened to take their children away from them. And the Yale came up with some sort of intervention, them peeing in a cup or whatever, with some counseling. But the problem is most of these women were very low income. They were like trying to raise a family on $10,000 a year. And so they were self-medicating probably with drugs, which isn't good. But at the end of the pee for a cup stage, it didn't really change the woman's material situation at all. And so you can see in this blog post that I did a couple years ago, this is a New York Times article, Issuing Bonds to Invest in People. This is in March 2018. A group of private and philanthropic investors led by European bank BNP Paribas invested in a social impact bond to fund a project in Connecticut. And again, northern New Jersey and Connecticut are where all the hedge funds are. So BNP Paribas was essentially leveraging low-income moms in addiction as part of their innovation portfolio, right? And so here's a clip where Mr. Pek is going to be talking about his client, BNP Paribas, and how innovative they were in building client customer relationships. And I just sort of wonder about these moms in Connecticut. Would they be considered as customers or what? Like, where do they fit into all of this disruptive innovation, being part of a giant, global bank's portfolio?
In the spring of 2017, I was asked by BNP Paribas, one of the leading global banks in the world, to help their top leaders transform themselves, to become more competitive, to become more innovative. They brought together the top 500 leaders, segmented along 7 top strategic priorities that range anything from technology to issues around compliance or customer services. The process that we used was design thinking. Design thinking to help them first understand what are the key issues, what are the key insights related to that topic, to build closer emotional ties to their customers.
Now, yeah, think about building closer emotional ties. And these are the people who are putting these women into social impact finance deals.
What BNP Paribas recognized as a result of this experience was there was this larger ecosystem of intelligence, meaning they had to connect with partners, thought leaders, customers, and themselves in order to generate new ideas that would help transform their culture.
Okay, so that's BNP Paribas. Again, they are specifically involved in pay-for-6 finance, targeting low-income women in addiction. And then we've got Citibank is another one of his clients, and they were working on innovative financing for development, which is the global aid space, and they have a foundation, and they were partnered up with Social Finance, which is Ronald Cohen's program. At the time, it says they were feeding money over to Social Finance for economic opportunity in San Francisco. This is in 2018. So, I guess this mostly covers what I wanted to talk about, but, I want to emphasize there's something not right here when there's a mention, a new member of an executive team of an organization that's supposed to be really strong values and position itself to be strong advocates for children, and that they bring in someone who has a professional background that seems in direct contradiction to the goals of said organization. And when someone is trying, like myself, is, legitimately trying to get clarification to make sure that I'm not misspeaking, that there's hedging going on. Again, I sent numerous text emails to try to clarify that Mr. Pek, his LinkedIn from DxD Partners, was indeed the person at Children's Health Defense. That did not go responded to, and yet, there was, a rather weak interview that was done, it seems like in response, honestly, to my questioning about the nature of his background. And his response was very weak, other than, in retrospect, maybe there were some things going wrong, but, my insider's knowledge will help reform the system. And that's sort of my takeaway from the interview that Michael Caine did on Friday with Mr. Pek. So I think, and I didn't mention, since he brought in his wife, like his wife is a partner in DxD, I will point out that she identifies, this is her Twitter, Janine McGlade, as a wellness coach and involved in corporate wellness as well. This is her website, Wellness, Meditation, Yoga, and Self-Care. It has a corporate wellness thing. Now, I don't know how big a thing that actually is. She has a Yoga RX copyright plan. So this seems like the kind of stuff, we'll pay you on blockchain to meditate and do yoga. And, I'm not saying that she's specifically involved in that, but that's the direction that this stuff is all headed, because they want us, in their noosphere, and they want our bodies and our minds part of their impact investment finance deals. So, she is developing things in this space around wellness, which I keep talking about. Not that I'm anti-wellness, but I certainly don't want to do it in the outside and robot, and I don't want it to be tied to HSBC or Citi or BNP Paribas or Barclays. No, thank you. And, based on the consulting clients that Mr. Pek has had over time, and Ericsson, Ericsson would be the one who would set you up with your smart house where you can do your meditation and your wellness, and you can get tokenized credits for that. So anyway, that's all I've got to say for Mr. Pek. But I would encourage folks, if you if you're a supporter of Children's Health Defense or Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s campaign, that it's probably time to ask some hard questions. And again, not to vilify him as a person. Everybody's got stuff that's going on. And, we can overcome our past. But with all of the possible candidates that you might bring in for an executive level position, the Pfizer connections and someone working for high finance and global pharmaceutical companies, helping them maximize their profit flows, it just doesn't, the optics are not good. I'll just say that the optics are not good. So ask some questions about that. Definitely ask some questions about this February 2023 hire of Andrew Pek at Children's Health Defense. So anyway, thanks for listening.